If we define religion as a set of doctrines to believe or rituals to practice, we do a great disservice. For those of us who call ourselves Christians, rooted in a gospel message of liberation, I have no choice but to be among those who are hungry, those who are thirsty, those who are naked, those who are the immigrant among us, those who are ill, and those who are in prison. And today's undocumented immigrant fits all of those categories. So in a very real way, if I want to see the face of Jesus, or I should say, if I want to see the face of Jesus, I need to look into the face of the undocumented immigrant, who is Jesus in the flesh here today. We are living in an age where every 4 days, 5 brown bodies die in the desert. And yet, that's not part of the conversation. What we have is a crisis on our border, a crisis in where brown bodies are dying on a regular basis. So the purpose of the book, the goal of the book, is to raise the consciousness of a nation that pretends that this is not happening. The reason we have an immigration crisis is because for over 150 years, we have been abusing our neighbors to the south, whether through wars of conquest, like the Mexican-American War, or through economic wars like NAFTA or gunboat diplomacy earlier in the century. So when we as a nation build roads into another country for the express purpose of stealing their natural resources and their cheap labor, why should we be shocked that those people take those same roads following everything that has been stolen from them? All too often, academics attempt to wrestle with an issue from the safety of their ivory towers. I argue that you cannot understand an issue. You cannot truly grasp the multidimensional aspects of an issue unless you physically occupy the space where oppression is occurring. So Towards an Ethics of Place forces the reader to leave the comfort of their living room and actually be virtually in the place where people are dying, where oppression is occurring. And for that reason, throughout the book, I focus on place, whether it be Nogales, whether it be Crawfordsville, whether it be in the courthouse, because these are the locales where lives are being destroyed. When NAFTA was passed, 1.7 million farmers lost their farm. And the reason was they could not compete with U.S. subsidized agricultural products, specifically corn. Unable to feed their families, they had no choice but to move to the maquiladoras. These are U.S. corporations on the southern side of the border. And being paid substandard wages, still unable to feed their family. They have no choice but to risk everything, including their lives, to cross that artificial border in the hopes of maybe surviving. Whenever a marginalized community attempts to find their own voice and hold the dominant culture accountable to the rhetoric of liberty and equality, you can always expect a backlash. You could always expect those who are losing their middle class privilege to, rather than look upward towards those who are benefiting from the gap of wealth, to instead look downward. So rather than saying, my job is being shipped to Mexico and that's because of the greed of the people who run these corporations, these same people provide a scapegoat and instead says the real threat, the real problem, are those Mexicans who are crossing the borders, taking your job and living off of welfare or receiving all these benefits and draining the system. So instead of looking upward to those who are benefiting from this crisis, they have given us the answer that the fault belongs to those who are downward. And all too often, the public buys this, as we see in this recent election, in what's being called the White Lash of build the wall and keep them out. That's foundational to how particularly white people voted in this last election. Political rhetoric, like build that wall, or, we're going to ship them all back, galvanizes the public to vote for individuals that give simplistic answers of blaming the other for their economic difficulties. And as long as I could focus on that external threat that is now within, I could get people to vote for me. And at the end of the day, what we just saw in the November election is the successful use of using fear-mongering in order to garner the votes to win an election. It's so easy to write a check. It's so easy to pray for these poor folks. But I don't believe that's what the call of the Christian is. What the call is to occupy that same place, that same space, as the masses who are hurting the masses that are oppressed. And this solidarity with the least of us is not only to be a good Christian, but also to be a good Muslim, and a good Hindu, and a good Jew, and a good atheist, and a good humanist, and a good Buddhist. Because this is a human crisis that requires all people to step up to the plate and do their faith rather than just preaching about personal piety. The issue of immigration is not just a scholarly focus for me. It's personal. When I came to this country, I was declared an undocumented immigrant, what people today want to call illegal, which of course is an insulting word, because no human is illegal. But when I came to this country, I received a letter from the U.S. Department of Nationalization asking me to self-deport. I did not. I stayed undocumented. So I have no choice but to be in solidarity with all the undocumented today. But I want to be very clear about something. I know because I have a dog in this fight, I could easily be dismissed as some angry Latino, and therefore everything I say could also be dismissed. What I need is for my white allies to also get involved in this issue, because they'll listen to you more than they'll probably listen to me. I don't want you to talk for me, but I want you to talk about your privilege in having people like me in this country. But to do so, you need to know what the issues are. And hopefully this book will raise the consciousness and provide you the ammunition you need to talk intelligently about what's going on. Anyone can give you facts and figures about the consequences of this immigration crisis. But what's important sometimes is to simply hear the stories of those who are the least among us, to allow them to have their own voice, and to privilege that voice that is so often absent from these discussions. So what I try to do in the book is to lift up those voices, to hear the voices that we seldom ever hear. So the book tries to do this, but you shouldn't be limited to just the book. There are people surrounding you that if you have eyes to see, you will see that these are also invisible voices. And I challenge you, hear their voices, hear their testimonies. Because if you do, unless your heart is of stone, it will be broken.